Welcome back to the Wallace Branch, and today we're going to be going a little bit to the east of Mullan, Idaho, and tackling the second of the mines on the route, the Gold Hunter Mine. When you have one of these very detailed sandborne maps and a lot of photos, and just the default cube sitting on top, honestly, I just love watching this initial part when everything is new. Now, for some reason, I decided it would make it easier if the initial layout consisted of some very tall blocks, and I guess that's because the building covers a lot of elevation. I stuck with this method for just a little while before abandoning these tall blocks. Just bear with me. The Gold Hunter has a tall structure by the tracks, which was a mini concentrator with zinc flotation. And then it has a bit of a trestle leading back to the mine mouth. On the track side, it has a water pipe that crosses the tracks and appears to connect with the river. This is how you build a building complex. Just taking rectangles and extruding them, it's easy and relaxing. Now, fortunately for viewing sanity, I reduced the roofline to 4 meters and imported the windows and doors from another asset to begin putting those in. One thing about these Old West mining facilities, they have a lot of windows. I think that's because electricity was expensive at the turn of the century. They had to generate it themselves, probably on site, with very inefficient coal generators. For the roof and window arrangements, I brought in some reference photos into Blender, and if you watched my earlier depot video, you can see I don't always do that with the reference photos. Sometimes I'm lazy and just open them in a separate application. I wanted to include the Gold Hunter because it's right along the NP main line, and also it has a rickety aspect that kind of reminds me of the mining structures of Malcolm Furlow, such as Furlow's Folly, which he created for John Olson's Jerome and Southwestern route. Here's how I'm creating the roofs and trying to ensure that they have even steepness in spite of having different dimensions. Basically, I'm using one roofline as a template and then pasting that roofline and then adjusting the meeting point using the edge slide. Doing the windows by just copying different sizes of windows from the group I imported, but at this point it looked like the windows were just a little bit too large for this wall, so they had to be shrunk down. Next, I started to apply a few textures from the large 2K PBR file that I had created for this asset. The file has the roof shingles, 2 types of wood planks for the walls, and a beaten up metallic texture in the corner. To make sure the shingles are the same scale, I just copied the roof planes and rotated. It's the same for the wall as well, just copying the wall segments and rotating them to ensure a match in scale on all 4 sides. According to a summary by the Idaho Humanities Council, the gold hunter's story began on May 15, 1884, when J.G. Hunter located his claim just north and east of Mullan. By the late 1920s, the gold hunter was one of the major silver-lead producers in the district. Gold Hunter's main haulage tunnel was 7,600 feet long, and the shaft was 1,500 feet deep. The entire complex boasted a complete and modern plant with an electric hoist, 2 compressors, pumps, and a machine and blacksmith shop. However, production fell off by the 1930s, and the mine was bankrupt and sold to other mining interests in the area. Later, technology proved that significant ore bodies were still present in the Gold Hunter, and the claims were eventually taken over by the Hecla Mining Company, and is known as the Hecla Lucky Friday Expansion Area. In 1977, Hecla decided to look for the downward extension of the Gold Hunter veins, and today ore is mined from the 5,900-foot level of the Hunter, and the mineralization extends to 7,900 feet. It is the primary source of ore mined from the silver shaft at today's Lucky Friday mine. Skipping ahead a bit, now let's have a look at the short track that connects this mill building to the actual mine over a short trestle. These little angled structures or curved structures, they're a little bit of a pain, but manageable with the edge slide function. Unfortunately, I didn't do the windows first, so that was a little bit painful. Next, I'm tackling the buildings on the slope above. I believe these buildings are changing rooms and then the actual mine access, plus a small sawmill. Fortunately, there are a lot of photos of Gold Hunter from multiple angles compared to most of the other mines. And then last is the curved trestle. It might have been possible to simply use an existing trestle asset from the DLS, but this trestle has a road that goes underneath, so I wasn't so sure about that. Finally, once one trestle pier is done, you can just duplicate it and rotate from above, and then put in the connecting timbers on the side. In the rendered mode, the final product looks pretty nice. Overall, the appearance seems pretty good to me, although I still would like it to look a little bit more weathered somehow. You can see that I added some tailings piles to the asset, which I hope won't be a problem to blend in later. Testing the boxcar and checking for clearance. This looks good, but later let's see about 2 tracks. One thing that's surprising is how the height of the hill does not seem to match the height of the asset. It could be that the tailings piles have grown since this is now the location or the approximate location of the Lucky Friday mine, or I might have the location wrong, or maybe I have the height wrong. And surprisingly, the 2 tracks appear to fit, albeit they are a little bit closer than I would normally put my mainline tracks. Another thing you'll notice about the asset is that it doesn't seem to have any ore chutes. This one wall is just windows, and I haven't decided whether to put in ore chutes to make this siding a little bit more useful. This is the measuring tool I made based on the track spacing in Kickstarter County. The small bar indicates the closest separation of yard tracks in St. Nicholas, and the large one is just the maximum distance. Anywhere in between that should be fine for straight and parallel tracks like these. And then next I'm checking my 1900 NP timetable, which indicates that the spur track at Hunter could hold 15 boxcars, which I interpreted as 40-foot boxcars. I decided to make it into a longer siding, however, with a short extra spur track for coal. Now comes the terraforming, again one of my favorite parts. Have to raise the ground under the main buildings and then dig out the mine buildings on the slope above. One of the tricky parts is that terraforming will tend to shift the height of the building, so I like to use a big brush at a carefully set height first, then I avoid the pivot point of the asset after that. And finally, I do a little bit of ground texturing and add other props, plus coloring the ground to lighten and darken parts to help them match the hue of the tailings piles that I added to the asset. And here we are at the final product. I hope you enjoyed seeing it from the beginning to end like this in a single episode. Now the Mullan region is almost done, and it's time to continue working east along the northern Pacific. Next, we'll have a very short visit to the Hale Hatchery just up the valley, which is a smaller asset, and that should give us some leisure time to enjoy some operations on the route. If you'd like to join, hit that like and subscribe buttons, and we'll see you next time on the Wallace Branch.